role of colonialism in Durkheim's writing is something of a puzzle and a paradox. It's often been argued that Durkheim is the most conservative of the classical figures, offering few resources for a critical sociology. There's also less direct engagement with colonialism and empire than is the case for the other writers, notwithstanding the immediacy of the issue for politics in the France of his time. To some extent, we draw inspiration from Karen E. Fields, a recent translator of Durkheim's Elementary Forms of the Religious Life, who sees parallels between Durkheim and Du Bois as outsider sociologists, Durkheim as a Jew and Du Bois as an African American. But first we need to clear up some misunderstandings. Durkheim is best known for his distinction between mechanical and organic solidarity. These two types of solidarity are frequently understood to represent two types of society, underpinned by the degree of development in the division of labour, the title of the book in which the types of solidarity are discussed by Durkheim. On this view, Durkheim is seeking to understand the nature of individualism in modern society and the kind of solidarity that is consistent with it, organic solidarity. In this way, he's argued to be presenting his arguments within a stadial framework, albeit one with the intermediate forms of society left unelaborated. This interpretation is reinforced by the idea, as presented in Elementary Forms of the Religious Life, that key aspects of religion can be understood by looking at human society at its simplest. However, as Fields argues, in the latter book, Durkheim is seeking to identify a core substance to religion shared across all societies. If Locke proposed that in the beginning all the world was America, Durkheim's rather different claim is that in the end we are all indigenous Australian. By studying Australian Aboriginal beliefs, we learn something about ourselves and not something we have left behind or outgrown. Durkheim is also regarded as a positivist, committed to a science of society and concerned with societal health and functioning, differentiating normal from pathological forms. Religion was not to be regarded as illusory, Durkheim argued, but as real. It was not one of the pathologies of modern life. Properly understood, it was also a guide to the nature of solidarity in modern societies. Indeed, when Durkheim discusses the different types of solidarity, he draws on examples from across different societies and times. It's clear that he's not seeking to characterize two types of society in an evolutionary sequence, but instead to illustrate different aspects of two types of solidarity, how they function and how they might be interrelated. Modern society then is characterized by having mechanical as well as organic forms of solidarity, not the replacement of one by the other. According to Durkheim, social phenomena should be understood as more than the aggregate of individuals' actions. And I quote from Durkheim, "The system, formed by their association, represents a specific reality which has its own characteristics." Mechanical and organic solidarity, then, are two types of system of association. But what interests Durkheim is how they may be combined and operate together as normal aspects of social functioning. Durkheim then is describing two types of positive solidarity. The first kind links the individual directly to society without any intermediary. With the second kind, he depends upon society because he depends upon the parts that go to constitute it. One, then, is an organized set of beliefs and sentiments common to all relevant members. The other is a system of different and special functions to which individuals are externally related through the interdependencies of the division of labour. Yet, as Durkheim observed, these two societies are really one. They are two facets of one and the same reality, but which nonetheless need to be distinguished from each other. Integration, the extent of interactions among members of a group, bears the imprint of mechanical solidarity, while regulation, specified rules of conduct, bears the imprint of organic solidarity. His concern was how these were articulated in modern society and the possible pathologies associated with them. Mechanical solidarity, then, for Durkheim, remained a significant aspect of modern community, but it could no longer easily function as an aspect of the conscience collective of all members. For example, the family is characterized by mechanical solidarity and a unity of feeling. But in modern societies, the family couldn't form a solution to the problem of anomie, or what Durkheim saw as the absence of regulation. This is because the family was increasingly separated from the sphere of paid work, meaning that there were sections of the day spent outside the domestic sphere and its influence. But this did not mean that the family was not important. In a similar way, just because religious belonging was no longer general, this did not mean that religion was not also important as a continuing source of solidarity for some members. The main problem, in Durkheim's view, was the class conflict evident in modern societies, which may be based on solidarities among workers and employers, where he called it a form of collective egoism, but which involved a form of unequal power, what he would term potentially a pathological and forced division of labour. In his view, regulation was necessary to ameliorate the tensions that could arise in occupational relations between workers and employers. In addition, since any regulatory mechanism required an intermediary agent to enforce it, the solution that Durkheim sought ultimately required the engagement of political authority, which itself had to be justified in a manner consistent with the regulatory mechanisms over the parts. In other words, professional morals of the regulation of occupational activities were interconnected with civic morals of the organization of public life. The state itself was the ultimate guardian of the regulatory frameworks and drew its legitimacy from the sanctity of the individual rights that were expressed as a form of what Durkheim called moral individualism. Durkheim looked beyond the French nation to consider how the religion of humanity was developing in the relations among states. Mindful of the territorial annexation of Alsace-Lorraine, which had taken place during the Franco-Prussian War, Durkheim proposed that states, nations, need not find their destiny in geographical expansion, even if that was the current situation of France with its imperial territories and was also the basis of conflicts among European powers that contributed urgency to his claim. And I long quote from Durkheim here. He wrote, "Everything justifies our belief that national aims do not lie at the summit of this hierarchy. It is human aims that are destined to be supreme. If each state had as its chief aim not to expand or to lengthen its borders, societies can take their pride not in being the greatest or the wealthiest, but in being the most just, the best organized, and in possessing the best moral constitution." In this way, Durkheim argued patriotism, that is, national patriotism, could become a fragment of world patriotism. Patriotism would be expressed not outwardly, but toward internal affairs and the reforms that Durkheim advocated. It's at this point that the absence of a discussion of colonialism is most evident. Durkheim failed to address the forced division of labour within French-administered territories, for example, Algeria, the Caribbean, and in Indochina, where no dialectical argument is necessary to demonstrate that the situation is one of forced labour rather than an expression of liberty in its anomic form. Nor does Durkheim discuss the colonial and imperial form of the modern state, despite his criticism of nationalism. While Durkheim raised the rights of the person above the rights of the state, it seems that those who were colonised had no such rights. Yet in his discussion of the Dreyfus affair and the anti-Semitism it expressed, Durkheim approached the Jewish question differently from other classical social theorists. Weber's position, for example, was at best one of assimilation within a dominant cultural understanding of the nation that was both Christian in its traditions and ethnically German in its national identity. Marx, for his part, addressed the Jewish question from the perspective of human emancipation. The issue for Marx was not to provide Jewish rights within the state, but to emancipate the state from religion, that is, to establish a secular state. In contrast, Durkheim postulated a pluralism of religious solidarities, of Catholic and Protestant, of Christian and Jew, within a secular republic whose norms were those of a religion of humanity that encompassed that plurality. The relation of secularism and religion, then, for him, should be seen as one of interfaith dialogue, in the sense that human rights represented for Durkheim a form of religion. In this way, Durkheim answered the Jewish question more profoundly than did Weber or Marx, and he did so in ways that are interesting from the point of view of a current Muslim question in the face of a contemporary and militantly secular French state, and indeed in terms of Islamophobia expressed widely through Europe. Or at least he might have done had he recognised French colonialism and its domination over Muslims in Algeria. Karen Field sees an analogy between the Negro question that Du Bois confronted and the Jewish question addressed by Durkheim, to which we can add the Muslim question. Each of the latter two questions has been posed to Jews and Muslims by other Europeans, just as the Negro question was posed to African Americans by European-descended white Americans. Jews and Muslims were present in Europe by historical processes that preceded modernity. Africans were brought to the US by a process of modernity, that of colonialism, just as some Muslims have also become part of Europe by colonial incorporation and dominance within multicultural empires. Yet Durkheim did not acknowledge these processes, notwithstanding their direct relevance to his concerns.